Yeah, okay. So number one, so the government are very proactive in terms of physical policy in the current pandemic. Is number one, and then number two. Uh, so as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, so the debt issue can be a serious concern for long-term economy. But now, so people think it seems like so they say for now. So what we need to worry about is whether we can survive to this pandemic. And then so we worry about how we are going to take care of the debt, right? So this is my second point. Now the third point is you may or may not heard about a term called MMT, modern money theory. So what is money? What is money? What is modern money theory? So basically, they say so. What the government can do or should do is just keep printing money. So as long as they can keep inflation under a certain level. You know why they should do that is because printing money is a very cheap way to finance government spending. And plus, so by printing money, so they won't create much burdens on the government budget. So that's different from debt, because if you issue debt, eventually you have to pay, right? But with printing money, so you don't. So in that sense, that's kind of the new sentiment among economists. Uh, in some sense, I took a detour to address the questions. Um, how to pronounce your name? Is Gunnar, right?
Gunner.
Gunnar. Okay, sorry. So Gunnar, so his question was, what's my view on this great reset, right? So I took a big detour to explain what's going on regarding to government debt. But I guess I haven't really directly answered your question yet. So this here just what I say so far, mostly is opinion of advanced economy, particularly U.S. economy, right? So the U.S. economy is so basically I mentioned it three things. Number one, the physical policy becomes way more proactive. And then number two, so the U.S. economy or the advanced economy is running a large deficit and accumulate tremendous amount of debt. And then number three, so people start to worry less about the debt itself. They worry more about whether we can survive. I mean, in terms of economy, right? So whether the economy can survive this pandemic, and then so we can figure out what we can do next. And also in terms of third point, so now the even though so most of the well-trained economists may hate this idea of MMT, but somehow this MMT gain momentum among politicians, or it's easier to say, right? So, but again, everything I said has very little to do with Great Reset. But what is Great Reset? To my point is, so this Great Reset is more to do with developing economy instead of developing economy in the following two sense. Number one, for a developing economy, think about United States. So they have the printing machine, meaning so they can finance spending, or in some sense they can dilute their debt through inflation. Because like think about United States, right? So the U.S. they can issue debt with dollar denominated. But now, if you think about African countries, say for example Nigeria, say for example Zimbabwe, right? So they probably have to issue U.S. Dollar denominated so that they can finance their spending or they can help their economy. But now they do not have the ability as the U.S. government have in terms of reduce their long-term debt burden. So in that sense, so this Great Reset probably is more relevant for developing country instead of developed country, because developed country itself in some sense, they have the key to reset its debt. Just think about United States, right? So if suddenly the US government print out a lot of money, suddenly they just use inflation, they can deflate the debt, right? But this is not a developing country can do. This is number one. The number two, for advanced economy, so the economy is way more resilient or more robust to a pandemic like we are facing now. What that means is, so advanced economy, they are going eventually they're going to recover, and they are going to recover quicker. They are going to, so after recovery, they probably is going to even grow faster. Now, because they have the they have the basic institutions, they have the basic economic fundamental to support economic growth. And so why I mentioned that is because so a sound economy is going to generate sustainable long-term fiscal revenue. So that's going to gradually wind down their government debt. But again, so this becomes challenging for a developing country. And so as we are going to discuss in the next chapter, so you can see, so for developing country, so they rely on lots of like what we call the foreign direct investment, but essentially they just rely on borrowing to support their economy, right? So in that sense, so this great reset is more relevant to developing country instead of developed country. Because to summarize, the developed countries, so number one, so they can manipulate, right? So I don't like the word, but that's true, right? So they can manipulate the debt through inflation, right? Through central bank. And the number two, so so the developed countries, so they have better economy, so allow them to generate sustainable or more robust long-term fiscal revenue to help them to reduce their government debt, right? So that's kind of my answer to your question regarding to this great reset. But certainly I need to look into a little bit more details. But one aspect I did not mention is since this this pandemic, worldwide people start to rethink the globalization. Not only because of this pandemic, I think so the inequality also force people to think about the globalization. From Econ 101 or the principle of micro and macro, we all knew globalization in theory is good, right? So because we can benefit from each other, okay? But in reality, it's a little bit more complicated. So in some sense, what I'm going to say in the following 1-2 minutes may conflict with what I said in my principal class, right? Because principal class, we cannot go in deep to discuss these things. Okay, so again, so from the principle on economic theory, everyone knew because of the theory of comparative advantage, we should open our door. We should advocate for globalization, right? But in reality, it's quite complicated in the sense that globalization, it does benefit people, but at the cost of somebody is suffering. Who is going to benefit? Let's say, myself certainly is a beneficiary of globalization. Without globalization, I probably still live in like a poor small town in China, right? But this globalization allows me to climb up the ladder. So I moved to the United States and eventually becomes a professor in a state university, right? So certainly I'm a benefit significantly from globalization. But this globalization, I benefit from globalization, but certainly somebody is going to pay the cost. Like say, for example, some locals in Nebraska, like farmers or whoever lost their jobs, right? So these things draw some attention recently. And people start to rethink how should we restructure this globalization. Another thing, fourth other thing, apparently, so the political environment in the United States also force people to think, right? So whether you like President Trump or not, okay, so that's your choice. But for us, and in particular for economists, we need to think about why he got elected. There must be a reason, right? Whether you like globalization or not, so there must be a reason why globalization becomes popular, right? So we need to think about what's behind that. So these two things are actually intertwined with each other. So the globalization has winners and losers, right? And that's going to create some interesting dynamics among the population. But that is going to naturally lead to interesting dynamics in the political environment. So anyway, so I kind of take a long detour to explain a question raised by Garner regarding to Great Reset, but everything has been linked together. To summarize, essentially, so we have poor countries, we have rich countries. So poor countries certainly relies on help from rest of the world in the sense like foreign direct investment or in the sense of borrowing. And furthermore, in a sense, relies on some like a technology adoption or technology export, right? So, but so this come at a cost. The cost is this globalization or this interconnected world certainly make certain group or certain part of the world suffering. They pay the cost. But now, so this pandemic make this conflict or make this challenging even more significant. People start to think about so whether or how should we address this issue. Anyway, so I guess I should take a long detour. So hopefully you see my point. Uh, any other questions regarding to this topic? This is a good question, actually. No? All right. So, wait, so how many students we have? We have 9 students. So we always miss 1 or 2 students. There are a few things I want to discuss. Number one, for homework 1, homework 2, I think I still missing a few students' submission. So if you have not submitted your homework 1, homework 2 yet, please, please submit by the end of this week. All right. So this is for homework. Regarding to group presentation, I'm not sure so whether we have all group yet. It seems like the group 1 is not. Let me see. Go to the link. Let me see. Group 1 on the Elizabeth is not here. Is Elizabeth here? No. Shakaha is not here, right? So what about group 2? Okay, group 2. I saw a student from group 2. Group 3. Okay, so I saw a student from group 3. Group 4. Good, group 4. Okay, so you have Garner on the corner. And the last group, Ethan with Jimmy. Oh, okay. So that means we only missing group 1, right? So group 2 and the 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are all set. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So now regarding to final presentation, so we haven't have full schedule yet. So I guess you need to, okay, so we have, because it seems like we only have 11 students left. So you need to put your name as soon as possible. So we have, right, so we have 11. So we have 3 days. So each day we have 4. So that's all we have. Okay. So that's for our homework and the midterms. Okay. What else? Okay, any question for me for now? Make sure you submit your homework, all right? So by the end of this week, that's for midterm, sorry, that's for homework 1 and homework 2, okay? Any question? No? Right, so now let's just back to our business, all right? So this is for the break. Actually, so last Monday, we have 4 breaks, so that's why we don't have class. So before the break, we talk about education. Let me just quickly run through what we have learned, okay, in that part of the slide. Okay. So when we start, we just start with the simple model to highlight the importance of human capital. Okay, so the human capital, this is tightly linked with education. Okay, so that's why we start with simple discussion on human capital. Okay. The way we understand human capital, I mean, there are 2 aspects. Number 1, the way to understand human capital is, so this is on top of physical capital. Okay, so the physical capital is the key to understand growth in solo model. But in solo model, in some sense, we leave the discussion of human capital aside. Now we just introduce the discussion of human capital. The human capital is going to help us to generate sustainable growth. But in the solo growth model, we all knew, so in the solo growth model, in the long run, the growth rate is going to be 0, or there's no growth in the solo growth model, right? So here now we introduce human capital. So we are going to see sustainable long run growth. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is to understand human capital. So we should understand human capital in the 2 distinct way or closely related way. One, so human capital, you can think about, so all throughout our life cycle, we spend our earlier life in school. Okay, so this is one way to understand human capital. So we stay in school so that we can accumulate skills, knowledge. So that's going to be useful once we enter the labor force. The other way to understand human capital is, so throughout the day, so we work during the daytime, we study during the nighttime, right? But again, that is similar to school. So the whole point here is we allocate a certain amount of our time, our energy, or effort, our resource to what? To produce human capital, right? To improve the quality of workers. Okay, so the reason why we want to improve the quality of workers, so that's going to improve the labor productivity. So this is on top of the solo growth model, right? So now through the human capital accumulation, so we improve the labor productivity so that we achieve long run economic growth. So that's the idea of human capital. And the key things in terms of building human capital is through education. But here, so this education, you should think in a broader way, right? So this education not only includes school, as we typically think, so this also includes like a training program, like on-the-job training, all right? And furthermore, so this human capital accumulation or the education can also happen through like workplace. Okay, so that's the way we understand education. So I'm going to skip this model. So we already looked at that model in details last time. The one thing I want to review is, so the economic policy and the growth, that's through the lens of education. Okay, so there are 2 parameters. One is B. B essentially is measuring the efficiency in education sector, or in the sector we produce human capital. In order to make this sector more efficient, so we need to provide incentive into our education system. Again, so this is just a broader way to think about education. Okay, so we need to provide incentive. So this incentive is going to improve B. Okay, so in some sense, United States is a good case study in terms of B. So if you look at different states, right? So the different states, they have quite different education outcome. Right. Okay, so the other parameter or the key policy instrument is changing U. What is U? Is a fraction of time or fraction of your effort put into the production of human capital. What we can do, so again, so we must change the incentive. So we can provide tax or subsidies to education. Okay, think about in most advanced economies, K to 12 is free, right? But this is not the case in developing country, right? Like where I grew up in China, so when I was a kid, okay, K to 12 wasn't free. It's even worse, actually, K to 12 can be quite expensive for most ordinary family, right? Okay, so in that sense, that's not a good way to promote education and a good way to promote human capital. And then some students may wondering, particularly for a student grow up in the advanced economy, isn't that a stupid idea? So they do not make K to 12 free. Absolutely, it is a stupid idea. But the reality is the government, they have very limited resource to use. So it becomes a very difficult choice to not let K to 12 be free because they have other more important things to do. Say, for example, they may need spend money to what? To keep everybody safe. Think about, so they need to spend money on the basic public health, right? Or say, for example, they need the money for like a lower level of development. They need money to do the basic infrastructure so that keep their population they feed their population. Okay, so in some sense the government was constrained. Okay? Once they move along the stage of economic growth, they have resource. Those resource allows them to make K to 12 free. Like again, so think about China. So this K to 12 becomes free only recently. Right, so that just help you to understand what's the case. I mean, even in the United States, you can think about the difference across states, right? So probably we knew, so Nebraska, that's my feeling, right? So I've been here for 4 years. My feeling is the state of Nebraska is a state they would rather spend money on something other than education. That's my feeling. Or in other words, so other states, they probably have a stronger incentive to spend money on education compared to Nebraska, right? So that is going to have implication regarding to the long run economic growth for the state of Nebraska compared to other states, right? Now, right, so we have a look at this model. So now, so in the last class, I already run through a bunch of statistics, right? So those statistics are regarding to the educational difference in terms of investment difference across countries. And interestingly, if you link those data to economic growth or economic development, you should see some interesting correlations, with no surprise. Okay, so I'm going to go to the second part, right? Now, in terms of education, so there are several types of education. First, we have formal education like schools, right? So as I just mentioned at the beginning of earlier slides, right? Then so we have non-formal education, including adult education or training, right? So this adult education, you think about, so the adults may go to school during the night, right? Think about maybe there's like professional school, okay? And so third, you have informal education. So this is through like a self-study or learning at home, like through your parents or through your siblings, on the job, in community. Okay, this community in the United States probably is show up in a way like a church, right? So this is also like informal education, but certainly not necessarily related to religions. So in the church, you can also learn other things, right? So this broadly speaking, not only those like skills you can use for your daily work, maybe some like communication skill, like interpersonal skill, right? So all of those things considered as education can improve the labor productivity. Right. Now, third topic in this chapter is education and development, right? So education is important in the sense education produce durable consumption goods. How we understand that? So example is why this is a durable consumption good. And the one way to understand that is so education provides us the ability to enjoy a novel. Right? So now just remind yourself, we talk about human development index. So in that discussion, we talk about these famous comics. What is his name? She's I think it's Shen. So this guy, sorry, I forgot how to pronounce his name. So he won Nobel Prize. He was an Indian American. He won Nobel Prize. He proposed this idea. It's called functionality, right? So when we talk about economic development, he emphasized we need to realize so functionality is important. Actually, here, so the ability to enjoy a novel is part of this functionality, right? So if you have wealth, you have high income, but however you are illiterate, so you really cannot enjoy those intellectual things we created, or you cannot have the ability to enjoy those intangible goods, right? So in that sense, you're going to be limited in terms of your functionality. So the education is going to improve your ability to function in that dimension, okay? And also education produces human capital. And this human capital is going to bring return in the future and also in a persistent way or in a profound way. Right? So there are many studies have shown that education and economic growth are positively related. Okay? So the mechanism underneath this correlation is also straightforward, right? So with better education, so we are going to generate higher level of human capital, improve labor productivity. So that's going to promote economic growth. So that's how they are positively related. Okay? And here I'm going to show you two data to kind of support the idea. The education and the growth, they are positively correlated. So this is two further evidence to support the idea, right? What we have seen here is the relative earning of adults working full-time by their educational attainment, right? Same example, so we look at where's United States? Where's United States? United States here. Okay, same example, we look at United States. So this kind of diamond, this master's, doctoral, or equivalent. This triangle, this is bachelor's. And this circle is short cycle tertiary. Think about community college, right? And certainly from here you can see the higher the level of educational attainment, higher your standard earning or relative earning, right? So in the United States, you can earn twice compared to the general public if you have master's or doctoral degree, right? So this just at the micro level shows us education positively correlated with your labor productivity. And then macro level, so that's going to translate into better long-run economic growth. Right? And another thing I want to highlight is the bigger the difference, like in the United States. Okay? So this bigger difference in terms of educational attainment is going to create an interesting trade-off. So the larger the difference is going to create stronger incentive. The incentive for people to attain higher educational level. But this higher educational level is going to boost up aggregate human capital. So in that sense, that's going to be beneficial to long-run economic growth. But the other side of the same coin is, so this bigger difference is going to generate larger inequality. Right? So this inequality is going to show up in terms of income. Right? So this education attainment is going to give you drastic or different income level. So that's going to widen the income inequality. But certainly there's a trade-off, right? Okay. The other one, again, so we still look at relative earning, but we look at different field. Okay? So this, again, so let's look at where's United States. Yeah, here, this is the United States. Right? And here, so this diamond is for teacher training and education science. And this triangle is science, math, or sometimes we could what's it called? SC, no. I forgot. All right, so science, mathematics, and computing. Right. So now this circle is for engineering, manufacturing, and construction. Now here you have health and welfare. Right. Okay. So the difference across different field is going to give people incentive to choose a different occupation. But this choice may translate into okay, so let me write down. First, it's going to have incentive for people to pursue certain career. And certainly those high paid, they have positive impact on the long-run economic growth. Right? Think about science, think about engineering. But there's a downside, right? So widen the gap, so to reduce people's incentive to pursue other field, but maybe also relevant. Think about teacher training and education. Think about health and welfare. Right? So that's going to reduce people's incentive to pursue in that particular area of study. But that may have some negative impact on long-run economic growth or long-run economic development. For two reasons. Number one, so the development is multi-dimensional. Right? So we need higher level GDP, but we also need better quality of life. If you have very little people devote their career to, say, for example, teacher training or education science or health and welfare, and then the quality of general public is alive may be reduced, right? On the other hand, so without those sectors, so that may reduce the accumulation of human capital, right? So again, this similar like in the previous slides. So there are interesting trade-offs when we look at this wage gap by different sector. Okay, so in the previous slide, we just look at earning gap by educational attainment, and here we just look at earning gap by field. Okay, now we look at, this is a last section in this slide. We understand the value of investment. Okay, we think we are going to do some economic analysis regarding to education. Okay, so we are going to look at cost and benefit analysis. Okay. So first look at the cost, but this cost is we call the present value. Here PV stands for present value. Okay, so how we understand present value? Okay. Say for example, you do some investment. Okay, so this investment can be anything. In our particular case, this is investing in education. If we invest in education, it might have some cost. Right? Think about, so you go to K-12, or think about you go to college. And also here, so this cost is opportunity cost. Right? So in economics, we always talk about opportunity cost. Right? But this cost is going to happen throughout certain time period. Right? And so for each time period, we say there's CT, that is a cost, and period T, that includes explicit and implicit cost. So in some sense, they just say, so we just consider all opportunity costs. I will have an example to show you what is explicit and implicit cost. Same example, okay? So for now, if you are in the college and you are graduating, so you're supposed to graduate the past summer. Now you decide to go to graduate school, right? And so the graduate school is going to take 2 years. And then, so that's going to have some cost. Explicit cost for you to go to graduate school is tuition, right? Like a boarding cost. Okay, so on and so forth. What are the implicit costs? The implicit cost is wage foregone, right? Because you cannot work as full time, and maybe other costs. Okay. Anyway, so this CT include those things, add them together. But in economics, $1 today versus $1 tomorrow. So their net value, when you stand at today, their net value to you are different. Right? So you really cannot simply add $1 today, today's $1 with tomorrow's $1 in economics. So we need to put them in the same scale so that we can add them together. The way we do is use discounting. Right? So $1 in future is going to be discounted by this amount, or in other words, here, right? So the cost happened in the future, in T years in the future, is going to be discounted by this amount. The way we understand is the following. If you have $1 today, okay? So if you wait or postpone your consumption until T years into the future, and then in T years in the future, so you're going to have 1 plus I raised to the power T dollars. Yeah, because this is a compounding, because you keep investing, right? So, but to you, this two amount is the same. You either consume $1 today, or you wait, you postpone your consumption until T years in the future. So that gives you 1 plus I raised to the power of t. So that's the amount you can consume. But these two are equivalent, right? So that just tells you, so in the future, so the dollar amount must be discounted by this value, right? Okay, so that's how we have present value of cost at the year t equal to CT discounted by this factor. Okay, and then so the total cost, the present value of total cost, is going to incur during the course of your investment equal to summation. Right? For each year, you have implicit and explicit costs, and you discount by this factor. You sum them together. So that gives you the present value of cost when you do an investment. Okay? This I is rate of interest. Okay? So what is the rate of interest? Think about the rate you have to pay, or you get paid if you invest in the treasury bond, or if you put your money in the stock market, or if you put the money in the bank. But typically here, so the rate of interest, we use some safe return. Think about treasury bond. Okay, so this is cost. But again, so this analysis can be generalized to anything, not only investing in education, but it can be investing in like a project, right? So now we look at the benefit. Similarly, we look at the present value. Okay, so this is present value. Present value of benefit. And then so similarly, so we use this factor to discount future benefit you're going to receive. Right? So the benefit you're going to receive in year T. And then so we are going to have present value of total benefit equal to the benefit in each year discounted by this factor. And then so we take a summation throughout the course of your investment. So that is the benefit. So now we have cost versus benefit. Right? So now we are ready to understand how we make our investment decision. So if benefit exceed cost, then the investment shouldn't be made. Otherwise, we should not. Right? So this is when we have a I. Okay? This I is going to help us to find out the present value for the cost and the benefit. There is an alternative way to look at this investment decision. Okay? So we are going to find out the interest rate, this R. So this is the interest rate such that you break even. So here, you break even in the sense the present value of benefit net of cost equal to 0. You find out an interest rate such that the present net benefit, okay, it's present net benefit. So this is benefit minus the cost, right? So your present net benefit equal to 0, or you break even. You find out this interest rate. Now, if this interest rate is higher than the outside option, think about this is a rate you can gain by investing some safe haven assets like US Treasury bill. And then so you must invest. Otherwise, you may not want to do the investment. All right, so these are two different way, but the idea is the same. We just find out the present value, okay, of your investment. Now let's look at an example. Okay. Say you have 2 years for your planning horizon. Okay. Start with cost. In the first year or year 0, you have a cost of 100. Just think about you must pay the tuition. Okay? And it includes your foregone wage. And then to simplify, there's no cost in year 1. Okay? So this is a cost. Now, this is the benefit in the first row. What's the benefit? Year 0, so you're starting, so you do not have much benefit. But now in year 1 or in the second year, so you're going to receive a wage rate of 110. Right? So now, just following the discussion we have, we are going to look at present value. So this is the present value of return. This is the present value of cost. So the present value of cost is fairly easy because the second year is 0. And then you only have the first year, so that's 100. Okay? Now, we are going to find out the internal rate such that you break even, or such that the net benefit is 0. So meaning, so you solve for this equation, and then you find out the interest rate is 10%. If the alternative investment opportunity will bring you 5% of interest or 5% return, that means it's better to do the education investment. Otherwise, you may want to choose this one. Right, so that's just an example to show you how we make our decision, or how we calculate the cost and the benefit of investing in education. Okay. Another example. Okay. So now we just extend the horizon to 3 period. Right. So now in the second year, so the return is going to be 110. Right. So, oh yeah. So let me start again. So you steer, so you take 1 year to study, and you pay a tuition of 100. So without education, so your wage is going to be grow to 110. Right? Sorry, apologize. So the better way to do that is, let me start again. Okay. So in this example, so let me find a better way to explain this idea. So now in this example, we have 3 years to plan. And in the first year, you go to school, right? The return for you is going to be 0. Once you're out of school, so you're going to receive 110 for the first year and 121 for the second year. So this reflects the value of the human capital. Now, what's the cost? The cost is, so 100. So this is a foregone wage, right? And without education, so yes, you have grown in your wage in the year 1, right? But then, so without education, so your skill becomes obsolete. You really don't have much skill, right? Because you don't have any education, so it becomes 0. So that's probably the better way to interpret this example, right? So in some sense, this is 100, 110. That's implicit cost. Okay, the foregone wage, right? But then, so the rest of the calculation is the same. This is the present value of total return. This is present value of total cost. All right. We need to find out the internal rate of return so that you break even. And so in this example, we find out the same internal rate of return of 10%. right? And then so you just compare these with the other investment opportunity you have to decide whether you do this investment or not, right? Okay, so in more general case, so we look at social and economic rate of return using all costs that includes public and private. Or benefit also includes private and social. Okay, so I guess we have example, right? So there's example to show you, right? So we have 2 periods to plan, right? So this is no school. This is with school, right? Just give me a second. I think we have. Right. So here, these are private. This is a private return. In the following slides, you're going to see. So we may need to consider social return or social cost. Right? Okay. Now let's see how we understand this example. Okay. So if you choose not to go to school, you are going to have earning of 15 versus 25. Okay. But now with school, so you're going to have a 0 earning in period 1 and 45 in period 2. And certainly, so you don't not pay any cost for go to school. So this just reflects this is your private cost, right? But from here, you can see the gain for in each period. The gain from school is negative. The first period is negative in the sense this is your opportunity cost. Once you go to school, you give up 15,000 of earning. But now second period, you're going to compensate by higher earning of 20,000 compared to without school. Okay, and then so here we can calculate the present value of gain from schooling. Okay, so this is the first period. This is the second period. We put some number if the interest rate, or we call the discount rate, the same things, equal to 10%. Then we find out V. Again, this is private V, private value of 3,181.8. Right? So this just pretty much follow what we just discussed in the previous few slides. Right? Now, we are going to consider some social costs. Right? So what is the social cost? Okay. So yes, first there are costs of private. So you have 1,000. Okay. And then so you have 2,000 government costs. So the government must spend in school. Right? So now we can see the net benefit becomes negative 1,000. Right? So comes from where? Comes from here. So this 1,000 minus 2,000 equal to negative 1,000. Right? So then, so what are we going to do? So let's go to the previous slides. So we have this V, right? So we just include the negative 1,000 into this discussion. Okay, so it goes back here. So we just add this minus 1,000 to the previous discussion. Now you can see, So we need a 25% of internal rate of return. So it's for you to break even. Right? So the key things here is we consider this negative 1,000 of social costs. Okay. Right. So they just follow the which again, sorry, apologize. I'm sorry, I probably made a mistake. Sorry, so here, so this V, this is the gain. Okay, so this is a gain, you're going to get this V or this value. And in this slide, in the next slide, what we calculate is this is a net benefit. This is a net private benefit. Because this negative 1,000 reflects the cost here. This V is coming from previous slide. That's given by these two terms. Right? So now in the following slides, we consider net social benefit. So V is this two terms. Now we add private and social. Let's go to the previous slide. So 1,000 plus 2,000. Right? So maybe I can just summarize here. So if you look at private benefit versus social benefit, so equal to V minus 1,000. Social then equal to V minus this net. V minus 1,000 minus 2,000. Right? So that's how we calculate. Okay? And V equal to minus 15,000 plus 20,000 divided by 1 plus R. Because in the first year, you fork 15,000 wage, and the second year, you have a additional income of 20,000. So this is V. So this is gain. And this is a private cost. This is a total social cost. This is private cost. Right. So let's just take a few minutes, like 15 minutes break, and we continue our discussion. All right.